I think this is the best solution. I'm so excited for it. Yeah, we want to be a part of it. Can't wait for you to get started. Please make this go faster than there. Hi. How are you?
We're good? Okay, welcome to our work meeting for November 9th. We will get going on the agenda. Start with item 1.1, review of this evening's agenda. Any comments, changes, concerns? Okay, we do have one recognition tonight. It's a high school, or high DECA. DECA.
And that's on your
Yeah.
agenda, right? I emailed them, but they didn't get back to me, so yeah.
Okay, so that'll be the recognition tonight.
Yeah.
Any future agenda items? 1.2, any future agenda items?
I don't believe so.
Okay, moving right along. 1.3, council discussion of future citizen recognitions.
So, I have a question about citizens that may not have, say, people who did favors for the city, who contributed something of their time, their effort, their energy in a notable way. We want to recognize them, right?
Right.
Would this be the appropriate place and time we would do that, or is there a different?
Wonder
Is
how
there a recognition
significant.
or award or something?
Yeah, how do you-
Yeah, how significant, there's gotta be a,
We do have volunteer appreciation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're going for, or if you're
Well-
doing something above and beyond type of,
Or a particular individual that was helping us out this morning
yes.
that I think should be recognized for that contribution.
Yeah.
do you think it goes as an actual agenda item or in this recognition period? I don't know the specific of it.
I would say he's put a lot of time and effort into the sound system
Okay.
and contributed quite a bit of,
That may
He
raise,
was there for 3 hours this morning.
that may raise it to the level of an actual agenda item and,
yeah, he was very helpful in getting that put together and.
I just do this.
or as a recognition, but
Yeah,
specifically
do
called
that.
out, yeah.
Like it.
Yeah, and I'd like to add him on to
Okay,
a future recognition and.
we'll get his
him on.
availability and.
Okay.
Chief, we need to still, look at that one for
Our officers.
that Congressman Owens did. We need to find a way to,
When do you wanna, is that public?
I would like to do that.
But is it now, the name?
No, it's
Okay.
not. So you told him? No, I'd like to.
It's weird, cause it's on his YouTube, but it hasn't.
Have a,
Yeah, we were just waiting to see when it got released, then we would.
So,
But
from what
it's been
I mean, it's
released.
public from him,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
so we can, yeah, it's public from from Congressman Owens.
Just.
I'll get it,
Badge stuff coming up on the 9th, you just
we
add
good
it.
it on the 9th for, cause we already have badge pending on the 9th, so.
December 9th?
Yeah,
Perfect,
we
let's
can
do
add
that.
that to it then.
Yeah,
What
we
meeting?
do wanna.
14.
we
Ninth,
wanna-
the
I'm sorry,
14th,
yeah.
yeah.
14th.
Today is the night, it's the
Yeah,
14th, it's the first meeting,
I'm like, no, the ninth would be a weird
it's the
mistake.
first meeting.
So when they're doing the bid
Because it
pennies,
is out on YouTube, so I
Yep.
think you could do something, and I can
Yes.
see if Nathaniel,
yeah, somebody like
would
Nathaniel
be a
could come,
part of
that'd be
that,
great.
so,
Even if Congress.
yeah, if
wants
he's
to do
here,
that.
then he could do it too, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
I may not be in attendance that night, almost
You're
100%
pretty busy
sure.
in
I'm pretty-
December.
Pretty busy during December, yeah.
okay. Move on to item 2.1. Update related to the proposed Game Point property.
Okay, so, the first meeting in October, Game Point Development Team showcased kind of a new concept for their property. Council suggested that they delve into that a little more, incorporating some of the elements requested by council. So they are back tonight to kind of review what they've come up with and, talk about the plans for moving forward. So I'll just turn the time over to the Game Point Development Team.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, council, for having us back. We appreciate the opportunity to come back with a more refined plan around what we'd like to propose, incorporating specifically the feedback to, enable some of the elements that the council thought were pleasing from a standpoint of transition and what we could do to attract more entertainment type tenants as well as part of the plan. So this part two review moves us into showing that feedback, giving you some more example project elements and facades, and hoping, our intent today is to hopefully get some general go-forward approvals to proceed towards permit based on this general concept that we're presenting to you tonight. So, first of all, this is the new proposed site use plan. You can see the elements that we've now reflected. In the far top right corner, we now have the two-story office retail that will have retail elements, office elements, retail possibly on the bottom, but we could make the whole thing office, but at the end of the day, it's a two-story office retail solution. Up at the top there, along Miller Crossing, you can see we have 3 retail pad areas that will include multiple retail concepts based on some of the tenant examples that we'll show you here in just a minute that are consistent with the desired use and tax base that we've been discussing. And then we've also then zoomed in and expanded on the restaurant dining pad location, making it more prominent along the Harriman Main Street location, having 2 potential 5,000 square foot pads, similar in size, for example, to Olive Garden from a standpoint of total square footage, or a possible 10,000 square foot tenant, depending on what we can attract from a restaurant perspective. But making that a much more prominent along Main Street, viewable as part of our plan. And then the key elements that we need to work out with the city is, making sure that we're in alignment with code relative to the zoning, from a parking perspective, et cetera. But we wanted to at least show you our alignment with what feedback we heard from you last time and kind of have a discussion right now about whether or not this is getting closer to what you were hoping to see. And kind of stop right there and start first seeking some of that feedback. Thoughts from the council?
Back to the council.
Is that stunned enjoyment or stunned silence? Or?
I would say this, I like that you've incorporated a lot of the comments we made. I think you made some good choices on there. The one thing I like about, the way you've laid it out is the ability to have very flexible amounts of space, right? They can have, a quarter to the whole thing,
Right.
allowing for a lot of different kinds of utility of the building.
Right.
A lot of different kinds of tenants. And I think that's appealing. As you know, we have a desire for certain kinds of amenities in the community, and I think that flexibility allows you to shrink or expand as those come in.
Agreed.
I also like the 2-story office option. I think that is much needed space in the community. And I like that it could be mixed use, but it may end up being, there might be enough demand to make it all office use, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Honestly, I've gone back and forth with the idea of, a 40,000 square foot destination entertainment building. I still think would just be awesome. I think it would be a huge draw. I'd love to see something like that, but it is what it is.
We've thought long and hard through the development side of it, and bringing and building things largely on spec, bringing tenants with us that we already know, and people we know will be successful. There's a lot of examples of people that came in. If you go to in Provo Beach, if you're familiar with that, big tenant, empty parking lot now, they're gone. A lot of these big entertainment areas, they'll come in and they disappear, and then you've got a really weird building to demise.
Right.
So now you're bringing another tenant, you're trying to cut that tenant in. And you've got lots of wasted space or just really weird space. These buildings work because of the size and how deep they are. You can actually cut them up. You got a 10,000 square foot user, you could go a single tenant, and if they fail, come back and cut it up, and it still works.
Right.
So we understand the city's desire for that entertainment side of things, and we wanna bring that. We've got a lot of great tenants I think will fit. And we're looking for bigger tenants, and I understand completely the idea of bringing an anchor here makes sense. The problem is the location right now is pretty barren, and so for us to wait for an anchor may take it. But we have people that will come now, that kinda if you build it, they will come mentality, but it's gotta work, and they've gotta have the frontage and the things that they need to succeed. And they feed off of each other. Even our two-story concept right now in Saratoga Springs, you know, I was skeptical even myself, and we came in and all these awesome medical end users showed up and took the top story, and then we did retail on the bottom. And it worked out great, and again, they feed off of each other, there's kind of this natural.
The dentist and the
effect.
sweet shop, we got it.
Well, actually, yes, we got the ice cream and then we got the dentist, and so, and then you got the therapist next to the people that do the plastic surgery, cause you're gonna need it, so. And it works, and so, and that concept, and you can demise those buildings into quarters where you can take, 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, which is great medical office use, and then you cut it up and use that. So you can certainly demise it for one tenant, a 10,000 square foot building, same thing. Even the buildings you're seeing the demising walls right now, we left the demising walls in for one purpose, to see that still works, but that whole building at 8,000 or maybe 7,800 square feet, I think is the model we had. These are off of existing buildings that I've built. So I know it works, I know how to plug these people in. And so I think it works, and I know it works, and I think this is a good way to bring that element there. We've got pretty pictures to show you.
Yeah, we do. So we
we
do
love that.
want you to see some.
It's always fun to have a pretty picture.
Yeah.
This is a building that I've built several times. We're changing colors, changing elevations. A nice modern, we spend a little more money on architecture. It's not just this boring box that a lot of people will put in to save money, just to maximize it. I think, keeping the architecture clean and cool brings greater results when it comes to finding tenants. So something like that on the retail side, moving into the two-story, this is what we just built. And we filled it up right away. Same kind of concept, it blends well with that particular roof line, the scheme works, it's beautiful. We can certainly incorporate, one of the things we can't really do right now is give you a total landscape plan, or we gotta know our elements that we're dealing with, and we've gotta get engineering involved from a DRC perspective, but at least you can see what we've done, and this is tried and tested. So.
On that two-story office building, is it open, it's clear span right now?
It is.
Both top and bottom floors?
Well, yes, it is
Minimum,
clear
but-
span,
Yeah,
the whole thing, however, we've gone in and demised it for 4 tenants.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how it
Awesome.
turned out, yeah. And I welcome anybody that wants to come to Saratoga and hang out with me. We'll get you some
It's a-
ice cream and a therapy appointment,
Your model would be build to lease, right?
yes,
Okay.
correct.
And you're gonna build all these,
That's the goal,
And
yeah, this is what I do.
and then just TI them as they come in?
Correct. And typically, once you get these LOIs that roll in and these people start accepting it and they see who these other tenants are, it creates a lot of excitement. We start posting that on advertising and that kind of thing, so.
And depending on, I'm assuming lease terms or whatever, there's build to suit stuff and.
Yeah,
all that good
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, we'll bring them in, negotiate the tenant improvement allowance. I can build it for them. I don't really enjoy doing tenant improvement stuff, but I'm the contractor, I can do it. But it's always nice to just build that in and give them what they need and negotiate that. We've got a lot of it, we've got the army that's followed me to every single place. So they wanna come up here. Everybody wants to be up here.
Recruiting office.
They really do,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had some conversations with another developer in the city. They potentially have a 40 or 50,000 square foot tenant
Great,
for a different location though,
okay,
for their location.
yeah.
Not too far from here, so it may be a potential thing to where, this, originally, I think this was the Anchor Point decision. I think the Auto Mall is the anchor.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah, and you got the Winco not too far away, you've got some big boxes there, right?
You've got enough acres close
Yeah.
by.
If you have a
Yeah.
breakfast store,
I've
that's an anchor right there, I know,
This
that's
is a
an anchor.
focus for us.
Yeah,
I've got some of the,
There'll be some overtime for the police directing traffic.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll get some
They'd be in there
coupons
eating.
and.
Yeah, but they'll be in there eating, right?
so,
But no, you're right, and I
Yeah,
think there's
through
enough
donuts.
acres
Oh, yeah.
close by. I wish they were closer, but it is what it is, and I think that once we start building the buildings and you start to see that buzz, you're gonna see a lot more happen. You'll see more developers feel comfortable to come in and build the way we want to, so.
you may need more office space.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I,
yeah.
I do wanna show you guys that, we're looking at some great potential tenants, even recommendations directly from you guys, that we're trying to pursue. So we do have some entertainment venues that are more like franchise groups that are looking to expand. This is a couple of examples that we've kind of sussed out already. We also have these brands that are already following Jared at different locations, both restaurant and retail brands that I think are consistent with the tax goals, you know, the revenue base, the tax base we're trying to generate in the area. And we're actively working that, where we are partnering with Colliers to help us in the promotion of the tenant offerings, and their work has already begun. They've got people that are already asking about the project. So we feel pretty confident that if we can have your support to proceed with this concept and begin the permitting process, we can get this through to the improvements starting point and ready to go.
Yeah, we can take these boxes now and plug them into whatever the DRC meeting brings us, whatever parking requirements are there. You know, we just need to know the parameters, but as long as we know we're heading in the right direction, we can certainly go that direction.
What's your ground to rent timeline?
Well, the rentals, they all want it to happen the very next day.
Right.
So these people will sign an LOI and eventually write to a lease contract with us putting a, you know, a non-refundable deposit down. And I've rarely had anybody back out of it. We'll move pretty quickly. Really depends on the city. If you guys can put us on the fast track for a permit, we could go pretty fast. And I'll build all the buildings simultaneously rather than, that's the goal. That's what
All
I've
the
done.
improvements, everything's
I'll do
done,
it all.
100%.
So you've got it all there, all the landscaping's going in, the parking lot's full, that kind of thing. That would be my preference.
Does that traffic, so if you scroll up to that first slide of the layout, is that traffic pattern with the access road on that
Far south end.
far south
Top
end
and
and, yeah?
the bottom.
We've got our engineer here with us that can talk to that.
Is that, would you not wanna split that to gain more square footage on your property with the other tenant, or how does that work out?
It's the auto mall.
Is the auto
Yeah,
mall, it's
if
gonna be the
Larry's
back
willing
of,
to do that with us,
We
we
are
would
open.
love
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Totally.
The auto dealerships typically, if you drive through Southtown, you'll see.
The backside
gates
is the
on 'em,
gates
and
and-
they'll
yeah.
close them at night, so
Yeah.
you might wanna have a little bit of a challenge coordinating.
I agree, yeah. Yeah, just a thought, I mean.
We've
this
looked
is-
at that and how to maximize it. We were sensitive to that too after our last meeting, you know. I'm the kind of developer that wants things to work, right? And I know that, you know, they feed off each other. And I also, from a cost perspective and just the financials, you've got to get things, I want to always try to maximize the subdivision, you know, on every square inch of this to make sense. It's got to make sense from the parking perspective and everything else, but we feel like this makes sense. We feel like we can do this. I think there's a discussion to be had for more than one drive-through. We have so many drive-through tenants that, you know, that's COVID and recession-proof when you have a drive-through. So I think that's a great tenant to put there. A lot of these, in fact, many of the restaurants you'd never even suspect would want a drive-through now want drive-throughs for that exact reason.
Well, they got one at the new, La Fountain, that's, you know,
Right.
you order and then you just drive through to pick
Well,
up,
you've
right?
seen this with some of these bigger Mexican restaurant chains that have done that now. I'm trying to think of the name of the one, but they're now, that's all they'll do is a drive-through. They still have their 5,000 square foot restaurant, but they want a drive-through
Yeah.
to come through. So we'd certainly love to kind of massage some more drive-throughs in there, but we wanted to at least show you conceptually what we're looking at. We want to have plenty of open spaces, plenty of landscape, and of course, we have the city parameters to go off of. So we'll take all of the city specs and then plug them in.
Is there an opportunity for another drive-through on there?
There
Yeah,
is,
there
yeah,
is.
we've got the
Others.
space, and we
Yeah.
could make it work. We can certainly show that to you later. More than anything, I wanted to show you conceptually this two-story blended with retail tenants, blended with that 10,000 square foot, you know, which could be a single tenant user.
Right.
Yeah. Could be, we've got golf simulators, we've got, you know, these type of tenants that will come in, but, you know, it really depends on the size of what they wanna do.
Laura definitely needs golf lessons.
I would, I would like to see this being, similar building type standards to the rest of the auto mall, right? Whatever setbacks, requirements and things that we have, cause if it was gonna be here, it would need to be complementary to that, not this really stand apart.
Sure,
That's
and
something, right?
when you say that, the only setbacks, I don't know the setbacks for an auto mall, so from a retail perspective, if you push things too far.
There's just some,
What are you talking about from a landscape perspective?
yeah, landscape design elements, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Just making sure that we're,
100%.
and
The
there may be
visual
some
aesthetics
twigs and
look
stuff in there,
similar,
yeah,
yeah.
that it's aesthetically complementary to
We
the
wanna
area.
make sure too, and of course, we'll bring the full color palette, we wanna change some things, a few things, and kind of keep it fun and modern and workable, and also, you know, landscaping is an important element of that, we don't ever chintz out on that kind of thing.
Does this fall under the AMSD? It's in the, no, it's
No,
a
but it's its
separate
own
app,
little
okay.
corner.
Yeah,
That,
that's its
but,
own NDA.
Yeah.
right, C two.
Yeah.
Cause I wonder, cause
has an
we're
NDA
relaxing
with it,
some
yeah.
of those standards, bricks and stone for the more modern look in commercial building and steel structure, lots of glass, that sort of thing. I don't know if that would help you though,
Well, I
honestly.
mean, glass is
yeah.
expensive, but it's
Yeah.
cool, and we're good with that, so.
Yeah,
But, you know, especially like the street frontage and stuff like that.
for sure,
Yeah.
And
and
it's,
signage and
Yeah.
those sort of things, yeah.
it does face
The other piece too is that,
west on that part of the
we wanna get clear on is the parking, you know, making sure we can make this work with parking and figuring that out within the current C two zone that we have.
It looks like there's more parking than typically on what we've seen lately, but.
Well, and we also have the benefit of, you know, for example, a breakfast restaurant location that's gonna utilize parking in the morning versus the evening use. We have that benefit, but working that out with you guys as part of the design plan is something that we've already brought up with engineering. And Greg, you wanna add anything to that?
No, yeah, I'm just gonna, like, when I go through a site plan, like, I get in trouble if I show like too much, like too many buildings, and they come in, you get slapped, you know, I go through the city and they lose a building, right? So I try to make it a little bit more conservative up front. We'll be working with the city and going through like all the road design, you know, and just make sure that we're good. So the site plan will see a little bit of a change, and we might squeeze in something else in addition to, so.
Yeah, we'll modify it to meet the C two zoning specs, whatever you need, and we'll make sure, when I do this as well, when we do build, we have to come in and kind of project what might show up. If we're building a lot of this on spec, we don't know exactly who the tenants are yet. We don't have a pretty good idea, some of the core ones I wanna break, but it's important to sort of plan, we're gonna have a sit down here, have a drive through here, we know some of these elements that are coming, we've got office is typically parked less than you'd see in retail. And so we try to do this good mix in the parking lots so that we have enough. Because we've all seen that model that doesn't work with too little parking, so we're sensitive to that.
Or crazy traffic patterns.
Like Mountain View Village.
Yep.
Obviously.
That's crazy.
I just think that this is. It's not a bad use for this property. I think it's, considering the fallout from the original plan. I mean, we could sit around and wait and hope that another, 40,000 square foot tenant wants to come in and maybe build another entertainment center or something. I don't know how realistic that is. I'm not saying that it's out of the question or not feasible or anything. I'm just not sure of the time horizon. With there's so much energy, there's so many good things happening, there's so much momentum around this area. I can't help but think that this would be a nice complementary element to the area and, an enhancement to everything else that's going on there.
Well, let's look at our options. We help this process through the time and money and this is ready to go. I'm sure if we said yes today, they'd dig tomorrow. Or we can exercise our option, put it out, hold it, find somebody 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever that may look like, before we have tax revenue, even perpetually, another 2 years to build.
And the tax revenue, I think, is at the core of all of our decision making here and why we're looking for retail, commercial, sales tax generating tenants, right? But I think there's another aspect that I've been noticing is there's just a lack of services and amenities, right? Anybody who wants to go to a sit down restaurant, with the exception of, a couple small
new ones,
restaurants
yeah.
here, right? Or an entertainment thing or anything. Everyone's going to
Office
another
space.
city, right? An office space. Everybody goes to another city to do any of that.
You've got a potential of minimum, maximum 18 different tax making entities in that property right now, rather than one, right? If we wanted that 40,000 square foot.
Maybe even 22. depending
Yeah.
on how
Oh,
you
yeah,
demise it,
yeah.
right? I'm just thinking you could
Depending
have.
if they demise it or
Yeah,
plus
I mean,
or minus, yeah.
there's a lot that could go in there, but the demising option is what is appealing to me, cause we're not saying a 10,000 square foot tenant can't come in and take up a big spot and do something cool. Or you can't get to 5,000 or 7,000 square foot
Right.
building
Oh,
or something
yeah.
like that, there's a
Very
lot
doable.
of options in there for different kinds of tenants.
Well, you look at the biggest tenants that you want, you look at these, and I realize like a 45,000 square foot anchor tenant coming in, but it's also scary. I mean, I have been in this business a long time, and I have seen these big box with big portfolios kind of fail. And then you're left with a really weird building to demise, what do you do with it, you know what I mean, what do you do with it?
And we've-
Kmart. So you have these buildings that if a tenant fails, you just cut it up and create, you know, you just keep going, the longevity of this is better. It's the way that it breaks out. You've got a 10,000 square foot, I don't know any restaurant that's 10,000 square.
Yeah, when we TI that this is beyond our control, but a suggestion is keep that on the 5,000 square foot side.
Absolutely.
And half and half,
Yes, that's
the kitchen and whatnot, so you can have dual kitchens.
No, it's the only way to do
yeah.
it. I totally agree. So you break that into two restaurants or a restaurant and something else. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, Olive Garden, I think they're barely 5,000 square feet.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is if, to your point of the complimentary things, right?
Yeah.
To be able to go on a date and there's an activity and
The
a
same
meal
parking lot?
and like all this stuff in the same place, right? You can go to dinner and walk across to the axe throwing, you
Gas
know?
prices, you might as well walk.
So we went out to La Fountain the other night with the family, and then walked across the street, got Brooker's and a cookie, and went home. Right, it was great, right?
I know, that's what I love about it, yeah. Well, this is working in Saratoga, if you wanna see a real time model of this, just finishing that project right now. And you're welcome to come hang out.
What's the vacancy rate that you got?
0.
See,
It's full, yeah.
We were full within months of advertising. Kickoff.
Can I ask you a question? And I don't wanna, I love this, like, by the way, I love the design, I love it. And I went back and I kinda, like you said, if this was a blank slate today, you know, we now heard from two people now that the entertainment center is not gonna work there. We've heard that from multiple people now, I think. Other experts, not just you guys, I've heard that from two other people saying another one's not gonna work right there. For whatever reason, that ship has sailed for me right there. I think our best option is probably Olympia or something similar, because we can't put a movie. I mean, we can't.
It's too
We're
close,
too
right? Yeah, we
close.
gotta go further west.
Gotta go, so there's certain things, so if we were to have a blank slate here, I don't think any of us at this table would say, no, this is not a great project right now. Saying that, I had the conversation with staff and economic development a little bit. Like, I think as a council, we keep saying destination, and staff keeps looking at us like, what do you mean by destination? And I've thought that a little bit, and I think what we're after is something unique that's not around in the area, and I think you're bringing that.
Those
I think
brands,
you're gonna bring some of those brands. But how can we, and again, we went through this with the Auto Mall. You're kind of, again, I'm gonna say this because of other past experiences we've had, not with you at all, but how can we guarantee that this doesn't become another, like, how can we modify this in
How do we not
to
get
where?
22
What's the
Madison
timeline?
credit unions?
Cause we don't build that kind of crap, we won't do it. That's the truth, the honest truth is what we bring is unique in the architecture, we'll make sure the architecture is really cool. People like that, it's not just another box. We're gonna make sure that the tenants don't overlap on each other. I signed agreements with every one of my tenants that we're not gonna bring their competition into the same parking lot. I'm not gonna sign a burger place and bring another burger place. I'm not gonna cannibalize these guys that way.
And I'm assuming you're gonna look at the other, cause I think the concern is
The
at
radiuses.
We have our agent here from Colliers actually already working on it. We've already got LOIs that are potential for us.
but you're watching the Anthem and you're making sure we're not,
Oh, for sure.
cause we don't wanna cannibalize something we want to.
I work closely with the agents at Scott Word is an associate of mine, so.
Yeah, we're gonna be very, very careful who the tenant choices are. We're gonna come, we're gonna make sure we're gonna vet them, make sure their financials are good. We're gonna make sure they're gonna exist and be able to function well. And when we do put them in there, we'll make sure they don't cannibalize the other tenants next to them. They're actually gonna work together and bring business because it does feed off of each other. Even the restaurant thing, you would think it'd be bad to stack other restaurants, but it's so great to have that choice to roll in. You're
area.
thinking breakfast,
Yep.
and now you're gonna go get Mexican, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And that,
But I think what you're gonna bring unique, you've got the office spot, and you've got two.
Yeah.
I think for me, with the office feature and having the 5,000 or 10,
Yep.
I would like to keep those as a minimum for right now, cause I think that's gonna guarantee a
I
unique.
totally agree.
I think that in of itself is.
I would also say that the best evidence of what we're gonna do is what's been done, the projects that Jared is building. I mean, you can go there, you
Should we
can
do a
see the
field
work
trip?
and the quality, you guys should really go take a look at it.
We have time. We don't have time, but.
No, not tonight, not tonight.
No, I'm not saying, I'm not saying.
Hey, sushi.
I'll make a motion to
deadlines.
recess.
Lunch read, let's go, I'm hungry. But no, it's great, we do have.
I mean,
some
we don't have to
really
have it scheduled, or like, just make a trip south down Redwood Road and drive through.
Go
the
check it out.
development, Yeah.
It turned out nice, I mean, we're finishing the TIs on Spa Trouvé, and some of the medical
Courtney's
uses in the
hilarious.
two-story. You know Courtney?
Oh, I love her.
Oh, she's
Yeah,
amazing.
She's amazing.
Oh, my girl's so on top of her game.
She's,
And she wants to expand, and she'll follow me to the next location. And I work deals with my tenants too to make sure we can grab them and bring them in. A lot of these tenants will come, I'll say, look, I'll build your entire space out. And just work it into the lease, I'll do it for you. So I help the tenants be successful, I want them to be successful. It's a working relationship, absolutely.
Is your plan to move forward under just the C2 zoning, no, not an MDA for it, or?
C2 works as long as we can get what we want, you know, if we can.
There is currently an
Based on the zoning, it seems like we can.
There's a game point MDA, is that what it is? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, for, at least for me, I know Sherry did talk about yesterday, you guys have answered the questions that we asked. I mean, we were just kicking the can indefinitely.
Right.
And we basically said, look, bring us something that we can make a decision on, so, or for us to really consider so that we can make a decision on our options.
Great.
So, I mean, I don't really have any other questions. You guys, if you took our comments into consideration, and we know this is kind of what you can do now, and I think we need to have that conversation, and then I don't think it'll take too long for us to get back.
Logistically, how do we handle the next step? Is it a council meeting, a public meeting where we make a decision
Is
to
it, or
proceed?
an application, or is it?
Do we do,
I
we
think-
file a
I think we
permit?
can-
What is it that we need to do
We didn't
next?
go through the same communication channel we had before.
Yeah, I think if whatever formal direction you end up giving us, then we can.
Well, it's not on,
We have to
is it on
modify
decision?
It's not, I mean,
So
I
we
I
have
think
to have
you
it
can,
on
you
so
can, you can tell us to bring it
Discuss our
back.
options and
Okay.
close, decide the board to just communicate it back
Yeah.
on the next agenda for whatever.
That makes
So-
sense.
Just, let's say that out loud so we understand is that we can discuss the specific contract negotiation stuff in a closed session. What things we might wanna modify for that and then make our decision and then move forward. Like, I don't think there's any reason to not bring it up in a, the next public meeting and make some decisions and move it forward and start digging.
We're ready.
What are the major changes from the current MDA rather than the single tenant 40,000 square feet?
Right now, the MDA specifically calls out entertainment venues, we would just need to figure out how
And
we
then
should
you,
move
and that's
that
where we're
forward.
talking about the landscaping and meshing it all.
Right.
And could we-
need to,
And, you know, I think that, well, we can talk about it.
Could we vacate, could we vacate the MDA and just go to regular C2 zoning, or is it
We
so?
could, but I think there's
MDA?
some, I think there's some
we can
ways
do
to make it
whatever
go
we
faster, yeah.
want that we agree to, right?
There's some insurances for us on the MDA though, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I think there's some ability to perhaps, the hard part is if you just make it C2,
Do they have to hit all those
there's so
checkboxes?
much flexibility they can have to bring in all those,
Okay.
permitted uses, right?
Sure.
Yep.
And
Okay.
some of those permitted uses would not be in alignment with
With what that area
what
was.
we want to have out there.
Okay.
I think through an MDA, there's ability to negotiate certain percentage of the square footage for certain types of amenities and
Okay, so
those
no
kind of
tattoo
things.
parlors is what you're saying?
Yeah, no pawn shops.
I don't know, I guess
Yeah,
it's
10,000
nice, got a nice
square feet
special.
ready to go.
I'm just saying.
I don't,
So Aaron,
Is
it
that-
sounds like,
There's, I think through the MDA, there's some ability to negotiate some of the things that we really would like to see there. I think you guys are on board with that.
absolutely.
Would we
So
have,
there's
We're in,
meant
we gotta
for
get to the
concept.
specifics.
would we have a
Right.
closed session MDA negotiation with you? And then we would take that to a public meeting for approval? How would it work?
no, it'd just be council only, yeah.
So our closed session is gonna be to talk about our
Your
options.
terms.
Yeah, how we,
Because
what
this
we
is
do with our
land
options.
purchase,
Yeah, yeah.
right, we have that option, so we need to have that discussion. Is this what we wanna do compared to our other options?
which
Some
we're
of the
having
things-
tonight, that's on our.
Some of the things
Okay.
Ted talked about, right,
Right.
so we can talk about those things and then communicate back to you
Okay.
what direction we should go and through all that.
Okay.
I think if we're, assuming that we are amenable in our decision, I think we move this forward pretty quick.
Yeah, there's no intention of us
Yeah.
to slow you up.
Okay. Well, thanks you guys for your time. Appreciate it. We look forward to the
We
next
are
session.
excited.
Thank you for turning this around, I know we asked for a lot 2 weeks ago, and so.
No, happy to
Come back.
You did all the work. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, then.
Good job, guys. I think your team's on the right track, thank you guys.
Start polishing those
Thanks so
shovels.
much. Thanks for your time.
Yes, guys.
Have a good evening.
You as well.
You too.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, move on to item 2.2, discussion regarding citywide fiber optic broadband open access internet network. Blake, a mouthful.
I didn't put a presentation together for this, but
Thank you.
for the station, look at Harriman City. think the first thing is what are we gonna name the fiber? So,
Palmer
we'll back up, hold on.
Who said that?
That's been the joke, right?
Oh, man.
So, it was probably it was over a year ago that the council directed staff to put together a task force to look into broadband internet. And, so we put together a task force, we've had a handful of meetings, we've explored many options. We put together a report as a task force, submitted it to the council, presented to the council several times, had, industry professionals, we have Todd Marriott in the corner back here, who has a lot of experience with, broadband fiber networks, as he was part of the task force. And so, went through that process and then we approached the council a little while ago to ask about going out to bid, or out to request proposals for, intent to negotiate. And so we, solicited for proposals, received 5 proposals back. The task force got together and reviewed those proposals. The proposal was for a network operator partner for an open access fiber. The 5 proposers were Strata Networks, Entry Point Networks, Utopia Fiber, Coherence Networks, and Google Fiber. As we went through all of the proposers and reviewed their documents and everything that they submitted, it was very clear to us that Strata Networks was the proposer that kind of stood out among all the others. There were several reasons why the others didn't stand out. There were some pretty grave concerns with some, a little bit more minor concerns with others, but Strata was very clear that they were the company that could deliver the project for us the best. So the next step is what we're kind of here for tonight, is to ask the council for direction on negotiating, with this intent to negotiate, how to move forward with Strata. Key items that you've kind of listed as a task force is how do we provide off-ramps and where at along the process to move forward and explore options of how to deliver a citywide fiber network. And at what point would we want to be able to have opportunity to back out if we chose to, or to keep going forward. Same with Strata Networks, I'm sure they would do that as well. The model that we want to deliver is still the one we recommended all along, is the subscription opt-out model. I know that there have been some concerns from task force members that that's never been actually executed before. So we'd kind of be going out on our own with this opt-out. Usually it's an opt-in model, it sounds like, where you, is that correct, Steve? The opt-in is usually.
That's what's been done more often, yeah.
And so opt-out would be that we would be coming through the neighborhood and going to your house unless you told us not to. But there'd be a significant outreach for that.
How many of them are arranged where the city is owning the infrastructure? Most
I
of
don't know
those
the
are
number
not,
right now,
right?
but everyone we've looked at is like that.
Well, yes. Yeah. We'll make it simple, yes.
And then the last key item we wanted to talk about was just the financial analysis, how this works. And so that's gonna be a key part, is I think we're gonna need, when we get to the end of this, negotiating this agreement, to move forward with it, we're probably gonna need some budget to pay Strata to go and design a network. Look at what are the options for, if we have this subscription rate, will it cost this much, we'll be able to charge this much, what's our revenue? So Strata has proposed in their proposal that they can build the entire thing out in 3 years. So the city would be lit up and ready to go in 3 years from the point of getting going.
Are there gonna be progress, like a third of the city per year, obviously, but are they gonna be up and running, or is it gonna be not till the end?
From what I understand is up and running as soon as it's
As soon as they
Yeah,
start?
My guess is they light it up as they go.
As they go, okay.
They'll need revenue, if they'll need
Yeah,
revenue,
yeah,
they'll
The
need
contract, why did we pay for them to tell us how much it's gonna cost?
No, not
A lot
their
of design
contract, it's the cost of the systems. Right,
That's
right now, we don't
they're
know,
part of my-
we don't know what the entire system will cost until they have to go through and say, this is exactly how you build it out. Right now, I think they've done super high level should be about this. But as we move through, we need to start dialing that in. This is what it will cost, this is how you move it through. We have had conversations this last week with City of American Fork. They're in this process about the potential of doing an interlocal that doesn't, this is not a joint and several, so you're not tied to each other's debt, but it really just allows you to either do some joint purchasing together to get better prices and do some things like that. So that will likely be part of this analysis. But that also would keep any debt off the city's books that goes into it.
And Strata's doing American.
Correct.
And Lehigh,
And Lehigh, right.
I think there's another
And
one.
Weber and some other, yeah.
I'm just saying that's how we're doing, okay, cause they're doing Strata.
Now, what, one concern is, I know they're great, and this may be a Todd question, but I know they're great with the 90,000 subscribers they have now in the basin or whatever other cities they have. When they get another 300,000 subscribers or more, can they, is that a bottleneck, the threshold, or are they, is that scalable?
Well, I can't speak for Strata, but I would say that knowing them, the bigger worry I'd have is not getting, they are getting a lot of work now. So I think you, and Harriman is a big deal for them, I would suppose, I think you're okay, but it's easy for them to scale up from an operational standpoint.
Okay.
What I think is gonna be harder for them is to, in this construction phase.
Procurement and fulfillment.
Yeah, and I saw this week where they put out, looking to get some, help in the construction phase just to make sure, so I thought that was wise of them, but.
Cause I know a lot of it's in-house, the majority of it.
But I think right now that, what helps you out is, and from that standpoint, is that they are doing Lehigh and American Forks staging there. I think it's great timing for you if you can get it to that point, cause I think that'll save you money.
Next question.
And I guess I didn't ask you, but long term down the road, having 300,000 customers is easier for them than trying to get 50,000 customers set up all at once.
So what exactly are you looking for as far as negotiating contract? What are the key points that you're looking for?
So those were the items that I came up with, provide off-ramps, make sure we have some options for the model that work towards a preference for the model, but you know, if that one doesn't look like it's gonna work, what are the other options? Keep that in the contract, that they're looking at those things. And then the full financial analysis for not just construction, but operational costs, you gotta set it all for various.
That's the main thing. Financing mechanism. As far as the, I'm good with this sort of
Yeah, I
model
think this,
for so many reasons.
I think this question, I think basically the question is, we sent out an intent to negotiate and pick somebody that we want to negotiate with. Now the question is, I think there are the steps in the direction of council, if we begin those negotiations in earnest, here's some of the things we'd like to get answers about before we sign anything or make any formal decisions, but let's at least go through a robust negotiation and analysis process so that we know what we might consider committing to.
Well, and some of these may be early deliverables, right? That financial analysis may be a
Right.
deliverable from them early on, so we can look at it and say, okay, here's where we're at, that's part of this off-ramp concept.
Our proposed schedule on this would be that we'd have a kickoff meeting next week with Strata to start discussions. And then we would have another follow-up meeting about 3 weeks after that to make some progress on a draft agreement. And then there would be a work meeting discussion on the December 14th with the council again to give you a status update on what we've done and any obstacles or findings that we've come up with at that point. There'd be a draft agreement finalized right around New Year's time. And we'd hopefully bring that draft agreement to the council on the 11th of January. We could have like public comment at that point on it. Possibly have a potential interlocal.
Will they give you enough time to notice public comment on the draft agreement? Or,
Yeah, for January.
I just make sure,
Are you all comfortable with the interlocal idea?
anytime we can save
I
money.
don't know. It's the first time I've heard of it.
So,
I still wanna know more details about how we finance this ourselves.
I think the one underlying premise has been, and and this is what I've been pushing in our negotiations all along and all of our discussions, is the city of Harriman can't put our budget at risk and our taxpayers on the hook for this system. It's just not a reasonable proposition at this point in our city's evolution. And that anything that we do to move forward has to be a standalone entity on its own. It's gotta be able to function, get financing, service that debt, all independently of any general obligations, sales tax revenue, things from the city. That's just, that's kind of a line in the sand, at least as far as I'm concerned. The good news is that there have been some preliminary evaluations that suggest bonding through an interlocal or another entity would keep it completely separate, and that there is a possibility to go out and obtain financing in the market to have it stand on its own. The rates would be higher for that kind of financing, but then that has to be worked into the model to see if it can still stand on its own,
That's
right?
commensurate with the risk.
Right. So it's gonna be, you know, a different kind of project, but I think that, ultimately, if it can't stand on its own, we're gonna have to really reconsider if this is the right decision, right? Cause there's just no way the city can afford to do it.
I would assume there's grant availability with an interlocal as well and not a city entity, or is it vice versa?
Not for suburban, if we were
Yeah,
rural,
rural.
right?
We're
Some
not
do
rural.
rural.
Yeah.
Qualify for any
That's
of that.
Okay.
So I mean, as far as having initial conversations and whatnot, absolutely start doing that. I mean, as far as signing a contract January 11th, I want those details.
There'll be lots of details before then.
Isn't it a better take rate as an opt-out? Would you, I mean, cause I know how many emails I unsubscribe
Oh,
because I have to opt out.
Right.
Not knowing of a system that's been set up that way, we don't
Yeah.
know, but it seems like
Okay.
it would.
But here's the thing I wanted to, that's why I asked Tammy to bring this back up, is that, in the survey, we asked people about a utility model, and we can look at what their, you know, the responses were. Okay, yeah, how interested are you in a utility model, open access network that provides ubiquitous internet access? That's 73%.
Lots of big words in there.
Yeah, well,
I think in order to make it work, the models we saw were, it needs to be not even half that. Not, actually, I think, well, the financing's changed a little bit, but I think at one point, a 7% participation, if, you know, 93% of the city opted out, it would still function.
That's
So,
awesome.
it, you know, even if we're in the 30% and 70% of the city opted out, which is
But we're negotiating,
mind-boggling to me, it's gonna be really wildly successful.
we're negotiating public easement access, correct? So they can go through our streets and go through, or what's our?
This would be a city.
This would be a,
That's what we.
okay, yeah, this would be a
So it'd be ours.
city-owned utility, municipal
We'd
utility.
be looking at installation methods to keep the cost down. We'd be
Right.
looking at the shallow trench on
Okay.
our local roads.
Micro trenches. Now, what if the other giant in the industry comes and says, hey, we wanna come in on top of you, or behind you, or underneath you
We,
at the same
we
time?
currently do allow that with the franchise agreement, and
Yeah.
to be honest, I've had calls from two already.
Cause nothing's
that are
stopping
interested,
them.
Which we
Yeah,
knew was gonna
that's right.
happen.
Yep.
We-
Yeah.
It's achieving what we were trying to do, provide more opportunities.
More
for
competition
residents.
and better services.
And that'll keep the rate down as well if there's other competition, so. yeah.
So we're not excluding them, we're actually inviting them.
Yeah, that- Cause one of the things that we talked about, and Todd made this point early on, it took me a while to kind of figure it out, but it's this idea of net benefit, right? Is that there's a drawback from having a monthly minimum payment that now we're going to obligate the residents to pay, right? Now for, you know, 96% of us, we're already paying something for our internet service, so if you can save me $10 somewhere else, the net zero. I think actually the net is gonna be substantially greater than that. Because let's say you have, you're gonna pay the $10 a month, but your utility bill that you're paying right now is at 75 or 90 bucks a month, and they're gonna cut it to $29.95 for 2 years. Great.
Win both ways, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. You pay the $10, and now you're paying half what you were, right? You still end up ahead. And so whether or not they're choosing one of the providers that will be on this network, if they're gonna stay with their own, if they're gonna choose another new one, whatever it is, you know, or expanded service that might be coming in, the net benefit to the resident or all the residents is gonna be pretty significant, no matter what option they choose. That's why I think it's that the competition is what drives the price down. And then the fee is what makes it a municipal broadband service that does all the other things we're talking about, right? It's not just an internet service.
You notice that we always talk about the internet. There's so many things that will save money for the city's perspective in almost every respect going forward. So it's not just, you know, by owning it, it creates value. But I just wanted to give you kind of just an idea in terms of how you sequence this, just to keep it in your mind. I hear Nathan always talk about these off-ramps. I'm sensitive to how he approaches that. I think he's been very good about, you know, bringing you this opportunity by letting you see and ease you down the road with good off-ramps. But I think from a scheduling standpoint right now in the market, you could be a year out with a company as good as Strata in getting
Taking started.
the materials.
Yeah.
Right? But just to give you an idea, that there's a ramp up period in terms of engineering that has to occur. And then, so at some point, as you're negotiating with them, you wanna start keeping in mind that there are some of those things that you're gonna wanna do ahead of a bonding scenario, because you don't want to delay it so long. Cause you can't, once you're bonded and you're digging dirt, you don't wanna be at that point and like, oh gosh, I got 6 to 8 months of engineering now and I didn't order materials and we're 2 years out. You know, once you start
Then you're
digging
double
dirt.
the cost by the time you're.
So right now, as you go in, I'm just gonna, you know, I'll work with Nathan and Blake, but you're gonna want, I mean, obviously get an MSA with Strata, but those MSAs can still have off-ramps, right? But you're gonna wanna start probably doing some pre-engineering. And you're
that's
probably
where the
gonna
idea
wanna
of some
order
cost maybe
material
being,
or
yeah.
arrange for
Say
material.
all, I mean,
Some
that's-
pre-engineering, yeah.
Cause likely your
After we
bill
go
for
through
that
this next
engineering,
couple
or
of
that
months.
bill for that equipment or that materials, you're not even gonna see that come in for a year or more, right?
And I think that's one thing in talking with the American Fork staff, they're doing some pre-ordering, they have not yet bonded, but they're doing some pre-ordering to long lead items, which, depending on your supply chain issues, some things that used to not be long lead are now long lead. I don't know if there's anything that used to be long lead that's now short, I think everything's just longer.
Those things are gonna change as we go through this next 12.
Yeah, so as we, really, I think out of this is we would negotiate, we'll work on, there's several different pieces that have to come together. And whether it's the 11th or the meeting after, there is at some point you choose, now you're on the freeway, right? You've missed all the towns, you're just going forward. But I think what we're looking for, if we have that permission from council, we can go out, we can negotiate, we can bring you back things. There are some items that we'll be able to answer because that's what this is going to do, right? They've gotta have a deliverable that brings us here as part of that
As
off
long as we
ramp.
have
They bring
those
us a plan.
off ramps as for us to consider. those, I'm
Correct.
good with that.
And that, so this negotiation may be identifying, here's a deliverable you get to look at and say, yes, okay, we're ready to move forward.
To Nathan, to your point, as you're going past those off-ramps to those towns, and you start spending real money, and you're starting to go, where's that money coming from the budget, because we have to bond it, you can recoup that money, once you bond, right, in your bonding parameters, so the city could, and I know Nathan knows that, but you could start spending some pre-engineering money, because if you think about it, your engineering is typically gonna be somewhere between 7.4 to
We have money later.
8.3% of your total, right, bill. So that's what, 4-ish million, and but some of the pre-engineering could be a lot less, like $1 million to $1.6 million. So if you're starting to speed up down that road, like Nathan says, and you're on that freeway, you'll wanna start spending some of that and do the ordering of materials so you don't get high-centered from a timing standpoint.
Can I just add one thing to what I'd like to, I think that's absolutely, we're on the same page. We talk about the savings to the city, I would love to have some ideas of what those savings are. and talk about how this could create some savings.
Or benefits for
Just some,
the-
just some idea, we don't need concrete numbers, but
We've had
just
kind
some,
of the nebulous, here's the general benefits, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and there's quote savings, but.
but what are they, what are they, just for me not understanding that, just, again,
Are you talking the smart city ideas or the?
well, just, I mean, Todd said, they said, yeah, just what, how are, like water, how would how would this
SCADA,
benefit water,
future
what are the savings of the
EMR,
water department?
Yeah.
secondary water
Efficiencies,
metering.
but if you're saying cost savings,
Right.
that's an idea, cause
Just-
those
I
are some
think
of the
that's some-
questions that we'll need to answer.
I think residents will ask that, especially a resident that might not understand this, might, you know,
My only concern is that there's gonna be additional equipment and costs to upgrade our water systems and upgrade our radios or police system or current, whatever programs or software that may be at their minimal, right? So it might not be direct money cost savings, but time management, employee hours, that sort of.
and that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying, maybe
yeah.
that, if that's the answer, that's
Yeah.
fine, that's, you know. Again, I don't think we need specifics, but just in other cities where this has been
Overall
implemented, where are the
projections,
same, you know, where are those
Just,
savings?
just a conversation, to tie into that, I had the other, I'll talk more about this, but Monday night I was having a conversation with, Ted Knowles from Wasatch, from Regional Council, about transportation issues, right? And how some of these things are gonna get solved and the limited resources they have and all the competing priorities and ideas and how much, you know, road miles they can actually build and all that kind of stuff. That not in any of the proposals over the next 30 years do any of those proposals consider the utilization of technology to create efficiencies using
Why would they?
broadband infrastructure.
Why would they though?
It was mind-boggling to me, and when I talked to him about it, he was like, I mean, like jaw dropped, like, oh my gosh, we have totally missed the boat there. We need to start having these conversations immediately. Because the technology exists, and I think considering, you know, how much lane miles cost, I think you're gonna get a lot better bang for your buck investing in, you know, AI traffic systems than you would in new road miles. And I think we can use the roads we have far more efficiently than we already do. And that's where I think we start to see it's,
It'd be good to see some
yeah.
numbers associated with it.
yeah, how do you calculate the cost savings of not having to build those roads on taxpayers over 30 years, right? That
And that's tough,
gets
that's a major,
complicated, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
just to consider that's the kind of things that those conversations have already started now, so.
Okay, think we're good? Okay, appreciate it, thank you. Move on to item 2.3, discussion
next week.
regarding, thanks, Don. Reimbursement to the Harriman Town Center communities for infrastructure improvements.
have a presentation for this one. So the town center, this has been in the works for quite a while, and so be a little bit of a history lesson here too. Let's see, this is not on. So to give a little background, town center, planned development, we're sitting in part of it right here. And this is the map from the 2008 plan. And one of the first things they did was figure out mechanisms to fund infrastructure. With any large scale development like this, that's pretty much the first step. So the two items that were set up to fund infrastructure, specifically for this one, were the special assessment area, which put an assessment per developable acre in the town center. I think that assessment was somewhere around $68,000 per developable acre. And then there was a CDA created over the area. And that was a, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, it was a property tax CDA.
We're at a tax increment.
And so those two items combined with impact fees were what was used to plan and fund all the infrastructure for the town center. And so the SAA, the city went and bonded with the assurance of the SAA, and all that work was completed and done and paid for. That's passed. And in your packet, there was a spreadsheet. If you had an opportunity to look at it, you read through that, it showed top of that had the SAA cost of it. SAA one was called. And then there was a second bond, and I was just talking with Kyle earlier today, and we kind of been misnaming that. We called it SAA bond two, but it was really a CDA bond that refinanced the original SAA bond. And it was used to complete the town center, well, the park, Crane Park, and the U-Road. And so that work is all done and over, and so we don't need to worry about those, but that's the history lesson is, that's where some of the funding came from, how things were paid. So fast forward to, a couple of years ago, Rosecrest was, I'm gonna say Rosecrest a lot, but it's actually Town Center Communities, HTC Communities. They submitted a reimbursement request for a handful of projects. And so that reimbursement request was about 19.2 million. I took just the projects out of that list, because there are some things that aren't projects, but we took the projects, made a map, and listed those, and that's why the numbers skip on the side here, you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, kind of jumps around a little bit. But this shows where the projects were at and what is being requested. Some of these have been partially reimbursed prior to this request, and some have not been reimbursed at all, and they were asking for full reimbursement on them. So this was dropped off and they're delivered to the city, and we started going through it and looking at it, and typically when we get reimbursement requests, we have a participation agreement or reimbursement agreement that lists the projects and how much we're supposed to reimburse for. As we got looking for that agreement with this list, we couldn't find an executed agreement on it. We found a draft agreement that the council had looked at several years ago, but nothing was ever executed. And the draft agreement also did not have a list of projects, it was kind of open-ended. So with that, I kind of wanted this discussion to just kind of be a preview to the council, because what we're looking for is, there's a whole list of projects here. There was never a participation agreement. There was a CDA set up to pay for infrastructure, but we're not sure if it was all of this infrastructure and all these projects, or if it was partial, some of them. We need to execute an agreement to put out any funds that are to HTC Communities for these improvements. And that's set the stage there, so open it up to discussion, questions, and we have Matt Watson and Corey Lyseth from HTC Communities to answer any questions. So I think most of the people at this table were not around, and much of this stuff was negotiated and talked about.
I don't think any of us were.
Is there a draft agreement that was never signed, or?
There is, but it doesn't have a project.
Yeah, there's no project list. The MDA discusses project improvements. This is a CDA, so most of these would not be considered project improvements.
So just a kind of a background on this, these were their actual costs on these projects. And then these are what have been reimbursed already, so you can see several have been partially or completely reimbursed. And then these are what are remaining to be reimbursed or requested. So this is the current request. So this is the list we're looking at, saying, do we want to make a participation agreement with all of these? Does the council feel like some of these don't qualify, or? That's the question.
There's some strange stuff with the SAA in that at some point, the contracts that exist say that that's paid, it's a superior lien to everything, when it's sold it's supposed to be paid. There was some deal made where they were not collecting those at the time. The SAA agreements state before we issue any building permits, those have to be paid off. I don't know
The
what
city
deal.
was supposed to collect them, or the?
It's collected and then paid, so the assessment area pays that off to bond. So the CDA has been paying some of those bonds, I think the developer paid some of those bonds, but again, it was when the property sold, they were supposed to be paid. There was some, and I don't know if any, I haven't met even Alan didn't know what the deal was with the SAA, other than they just, at some point, quit collecting it and the CDA started paying it. So there's a lot of stuff on this that we should.
It's a little complicated. We've been working on it for over a year.
What's the forecasted revenue of the CDA?
The remainder that's left after bond payments, it's approximately 32 million. That's over the life of the CDA.
And that makes some assumptions about development, right?
Yeah.
Development stuff now, you would not see that.
Understood, right? But theoretically up to 32 million over the rest of the life of it.
Right.
Okay.
And are there any future projects needed?
I think it was anticipated that 132nd would be paid out of the CDA. Whether that was HTC building it, the city building it, or some other developer building it. I believe that's where those revenues were intended.
When I was looking at this, I thought, okay, I guess I'd like to hear the case for each one, like why this would be immersed, what was the thinking behind this? Is this a system improvement? Is this just, only for some houses, right? Those kind of things, right? Like, trying to understand kind of, the history behind these, the ones that, I guess would say, I'd like to know which ones seem pretty obvious that there shouldn't be much question or concern about. These are the ones that, yeah, we should go ahead and take care of without question. Here's the ones that
Gray area.
probably, but there's some questions we need to ask and figure out. Then here's some ones that we're like, man, we're not really sure about these and we wanna have a little further conversation about it. Cause it's too big of a thing for me to tell you, yes, no, maybe, I just can't get there.
I anticipated that when I was writing the staff report, I'm like, this is kind of the introduction to the council
Yeah.
on this whole item.
What we're gonna need is for you to walk us through each one and give us recommendations. Here's how we categorize them according to basically what things that Steve said and our suggestions and the attorney's perspective on consistency across different, because basically there's no agreement that says who does what or when or how. There's this loose wording that says somebody does something at some point. So we kinda have to go back through and say, okay, well, what has been done, what's consistent, and come up with a new agreement for how to proceed from here.
One thing I could find was the CDA project area plan has a list of things, but it's not binding. So what is to be reimbursed for? It's just the CDA.
I just said what's a project improvement and what's not, and the way that it was funded with the bonds, what was paid, what wasn't. So I guess that's, at least for me, looking through all this and having a few conversations with staff is, I'd like to have a more serious conversation, especially with the attorney of, okay, well, to me, this really looks more like you need counsel to say this is how we'd like to proceed, and then go to HTC and say, we need a new agreement, right, that checks most of the boxes for both of us. There's no way we're both gonna agree on everything, but we need something that we can agree on to go forward. Because there's just nothing, I don't see if there's any way that we can really keep going with the way it has been done.
What I think we could do as staff is we could take the participation agreement that's drafted, throw the recommended project list in there, and we'll have to go through and look through each one, coordinate with HTC, and get that, why are you asking for this one? Make sure we're not doubling it.
It's gonna be tedious, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it more from a higher level, I have to, right? Is, okay, well, go back to the financing and the original intent, right? And that, what wasn't executed and why, right? Was it a detailed list, was it not? So what were project improvements under this one? What are the system improvements under this one? Attorney, under the existing agreement, like what are we required to do? What is the gray area and why, right? And then if we're gonna start making payments, like, well, I need some assurance that we're going to be doing it in a way that's consistent going forward, so we don't keep having this conversation.
And a couple things that are concerning to me, I'm right in line with Jared, is not that they can bind us, the old council or their intent or the old manager or whoever made these agreements and deals. But understanding their intent to have a good working partner, right, cause we wanna maintain that. And try to honor most of those agreements if we can, but
What makes sense and what doesn't.
yeah,
right?
and at the percentage of the project completion with a quarter or less of the reimbursements already been paid out, like the consistency of follow-up and did we drop the ball, did HTC drop the ball, did one of the MDA, like what happened there to where we missed payments or didn't continue on these reimbursement agreements?
So there are no reimbursement agreements.
Right,
That's why.
right,
So
okay.
that's why the payments, at some point, finance, this was, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago, because we had no written agreement, there was really nothing for us to justify a payment to
Okay.
our auditors or how we move forward. So that's why you haven't seen any payments from here, because you have, there are no agreements.
That,
in
the
place.
draft.
Well, I
the
think
draft
there's
that's
another
in
part
the-
of it too, is that they didn't necessarily have all the information to request those reimbursements for it. You guys were working on gathering that paperwork for quite a while too.
Were they
About 2
requ-
years ago we
Yeah.
got it, so yeah.
Right,
Okay.
and so the draft that's in there is what council had considered, kind of had the same conversation at that time.
2 years ago?
And if you read the one that's in the packet, it's general information and it references a list of projects to be determined, and those have never been determined. So my interpretation from reading all that and talking to staff members is that that's kind of what we have to get back to, is have that conversation over again and say, okay, going forward, here's what we agree to or don't, and find out what we don't agree on, right, and work through that, but there's not an agreement to work off of, right?
Yeah.
Nothing was ever put in place originally, or at that meeting that I was a part of that meeting, and it was this kind of same conversation, and nothing was ever done. So rather than keep having this conversation again, I think we've got the pieces in place to say, okay, we need to kind of start over.
Yeah, and then
And
a list of
what's-
any other
what's the-
projects outstanding,
What's
right?
the path forward from here, right? And I think that a lot of that's gonna be from legal, look, these are the things that really you need to do based on what you have done and the things that we're agreed on. These are things that are questionable, and we need to have conversations to decide a mutual path forward.
Right, and I'd like to go on record just saying, I think that, we've recognized over and over and over again, some, I wanna be careful how I say this, some of the decisions or actions that were taken years and years and years and years ago, have sometimes created these kind of situations, right? And we don't know, oversight, mistakes, assumptions, verbal agreements versus written agreements, like there's a whole bunch of different reasons, and I'm not trying to call anybody out with that.
But we've set
But-
out to fix those things,
Right.
and this is part of it.
We've been trying to do that, and I think this part, but I would say that generally speaking, I'm in favor of doing what we can to honor the
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
the commitments and agreements that have been made in the past, and do our best to find our way forward to get this stuff taken care of. I don't think this is an opportunity for us to go, all right, let's see how we can go get those developers and take advantage of, the pirate in us. You're supposed to smile at that, Greg, go ahead. I don't think that's our intention here. I think it's to try and figure out how we can get as much of this to you guys as we possibly can, so that's what I would
Makes
say.
sense for this.
Who's paying for this right now? Like, there's $20 million, somebody's gotta be paying interest or something or holding it.
HTC Communities holding the
HTC
bag on it.
Communities.
And they have been for some time, so.
Well, and again, and Steve, going back to your point, I mean, this really goes back 5 years ago, so April 2017, when the current bond that was in place, and let's say the bond payment every spring is $1 million. Okay, Alan came to us in the spring of 2017 and said, hey, we've got a shortfall on this first bond payment of about $150,000. And can you guys cover that? And we said, yeah, of course, and so we'll give you a check for $150,000, and that's in these numbers. And again, the conversation between Alan and the other people that were here at that time, 5 years ago, said, hopefully next year, this bond payment is gonna be covered by a combination of impact fees, tax increment, whatever was in place. And we said, okay, that's great. So 2018 comes around and I said, so are we good? Yep, we're good. Okay, great. Could I get some sort of reconciliation that shows, is there a surplus, or if they're like, we're not expecting a check, but if there is a surplus, let's keep that in place just in case something crazy happens, like happened in 2008 or 9 or 10. And if we gotta use this year's fund to pay part of next year's fund, let's just keep that rolling. And then I did that again in 2019. Hey, can we get a reconciliation of where we're at? Never got it. Same thing in 2020. Well, no, let me go back to 2019. When we negotiated the 2 hospital sites, the one behind Walmart and the other one behind, I guess, Retail Row on 134th, in order to close those deals, HTC paid the assessment on both of those lots to the tune of about $629,000. So we paid that directly to the city to close those deals, to cover that. And again, that was just another surplus on top of the surplus to cover the annual bond payments just in case there was a shortfall. So 2020 goes by, last year goes by, this year goes by. We have yet to see any sort of a reconciliation, and I don't need a detailed spreadsheet even like this. I just would like to see a number that shows, hey, since 2018, we've had this many bond payments, and here's the excess that's sitting there. That's, again, like you guys want transparency, Jared, that's all we want too.
Yeah, we need to know that too, because that, if there's $6 in there, well, that would answer a lot of questions for us right now, right? If there's $6 million in there, okay, now we have some decisions to
Exactly,
make.
Steve. And in this 19 million, it includes, where is it on here?
Bond payments bottom, 6 million.
Last line, 6 million.
Last line, 6 million. Okay, there's bond payments there, but I'm talking about Harriman Rose Boulevard. Mayor, that's the road that we still have an obligation to finish. And it's been in our budget for 3 years now.
The top end of 132nd, right?
Yeah, 102nd extension. And as much as I would love to go to that complex in Riverton and put flyers on everybody's door that says, okay, this roadway is not your boat storage anymore, it's not your RV storage. This is now gonna be an active construction site because we wanna build that thing. Obviously, we've missed the pave window right now, because I think all that's left is to pave that road, right? There's some additional, there's some stuff.
There's a little bit of storm drainage.
But it's a road that we wanna finish because those numbers are in these numbers that we're asking for reimbursement on, but. And again, that's property that we own, that we're paying taxes on, that I would love nothing more than to get that done, get that road done and get that property deeded over to you guys. So now that's a throughway to bring people, from over there into here and vice versa. And so it's been, and Blake knows, he's been ground zero in a lot of these meetings with us over the past couple of years trying to get this stuff wrapped up, so anyway. But that's where we're at from a development standpoint.
Really what we need eventually is a written agreement that we can pay to, both parties know what we're paying down, where it's coming from.
And the order, the priority.
Yeah, and similar to the one that's in place with Rosecrest, and there's some common ownership in Rosecrest and Harriman Town Center, and so, but there were some different motivations, I would say, with the developer on the Rosecrest side, because of the ownership structure, because of who the principals were in that, and we as stewards of Rosecrest, as much as we are HTC, wanted to make sure that the Rosecrest property got done and taken care of first, and we, being Momentum, as part owners in HTC communities, we're willing to take a backseat on this, and maybe that's to our detriment, I don't know, but I think we have a good enough relationship with the group that's been here and the group that's here now, that we can figure something out.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I've been listening to you on Facebook, but, and I love what Nathan just said. I think as this comes back, I have no interest of doing business without contracts that are signed. And so, I just think that's just such a key component. That's why we're in this mess. And the way to
Couldn't
get
agree
out
more.
of it is to make sure we don't enter into any agreements that don't get executed. And that's your responsibility and our responsibility.
So we'll come back at future council meeting, probably almost the next one, with some recommendations and probably fill in the draft agreement with some information and some numbers so that we can actually have a meaningful discussion that moves this forward, closer to the finish line if not there. Okay.
Thank you, guys, appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and, we only got 7 minutes, I don't think any of these items. Sorry, I'm trying to get you before Jen. Okay,
You wanna
let's,
do your proclamation for disability?
yeah, real fast, yeah. Look at 2.6 real fast. We have that resident speak about that proclamation. So I guess we're just, are we okay with that as a?
So the proclamation, from just a quick review, it's designated 1 week out of, is it October?
It's, I think, April.
April, oh, it's April, yeah.
It's coming
It's
up.
April, as a disability awareness week, basically, yeah. It wouldn't require any financial impact or any recognition for the city, but if we have a meeting that night, we might mention it or
Right.
mention it that month.
And we issue a proclamation.
Yeah.
Declaring it that
That
whatever week.
It's disability book week.
Disability book week, that's
There's
right.
books about children,
she's
with
a-
disability and how they deal with the world and interact
Yeah.
with
So
their
she's a
friends.
Harriman resident, she's
Yeah, makes
getting
sense.
ready to, she's trying to create a statewide coalition with this, you know. So she wants to use her city, her own community as a, cause she wants to go to Governor Cox, trying to make it a statewide recognition, so she.
It was good that the new library director was here that night
It was
too.
really cool. They
and, yeah,
connected
They
and-
connected.
So I mean, I read your email, and there, my thing on these proclamations is, I don't like them. Right, cause they often turn political in some ways. This is a good cause, everything, but reading the email, is this, what it sounds like she's looking for is to get cities to support her push to actually do something meaningful on a higher level, cause this is one of those things that it's not something we have purview over, right? There should be a proclamation, or I don't know what good that does her, other than her taking it to the governor's office with other cities. I'm fine with that, it's harmless, but is that the best way to go for her? Is it better to have a letter signed by the Harriman City Council that we support this, and like, within our community sort of thing? Cause reading through that email, she's saying that her goal is to to change the law, and there is no law in Harriman.
Right.
That's not us, it's a higher level that she needs to be talking to. Can we, is there something that we can do to support her in doing that, right? Then,
Yeah.
so I think that's maybe what she's trying to do, is get the lower level governments together. She has enough of those letters to take to the higher level to say the local community support this. So I'm just thinking, what's the best way we can,
I can talk to her if you'd like, I can,
is that a proclamation, is it something else, what?
yeah, I'll reach out to her.
I have the same issue with proclamations, especially when something really over. And the other thing too is that disability book week, what's to say that the disability books can't change and morph, and do all those books really represent what we would want them to represent? You know what I mean? Who's gonna be the police over that to make sure that
And
as
that's why it's a
years
higher
in the
level.
future that our
Harriman.
Yeah.
I don't think we can control what's in our schools right now, so.
Right,
it's-
so that's why
yeah, but
I
it's-
feel hesitant on doing a proclamation about it, especially when we have no control over
I
any
would-
of it.
I would tend to be more in favor of having a proclamation about bringing awareness to people with disabilities in our
Right.
community
Yeah.
than I would be about endorsing any particular
Right.
way of doing that, you know, like
Yeah.
a book or a specific
And I
walk
think she went
or
with
a
book
whatever,
because she's
you
an
know.
author, right? So that
Yeah.
was her.
Her cause is
Yeah.
great,
Sure,
I
I-
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I almost agree with you, Steve, like,
Right.
That's
even if we had a proclamation about Awareness Cancer Week, or No Shave November, or whatever it might be, right? That-
Cause one of the things she said in the email was, she wants to have this so that she can be in stores in Harriman. That's not what this would do for her, like, all the things she wants to accomplish, that's not what this would do for her. So.
Nor should we be leveraged to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Be-
For that aspect,
Yeah.
yeah.
I, the way you put it, Steve, I think is perfect, right? The general awareness, great, but a particular way of doing it.
Method or means, yeah.
That's where I have my hesitation. Yeah.
And she'd never been through that, she admittedly's never been through it, she didn't know.
That's what it
that.
sounded like, that's what I'm
So
saying,
she was just looking
I don't wanna
for-
say that, no, we don't
Yeah.
like it, but
It's a great
what's,
cause.
what's the right way that we can help her
Yes.
get to the level that she's looking for to do the things
Is
that
it an
she
official
wants
letter
to?
from the city? Is it an
I'll talk
official
to her, yeah,
proclamation?
maybe that's.
I'm at least personal introductions and Instagram friends with Amy Van Dyken, the Olympic gold medal swimer, who was, or, you know, she was in a ATV accident and she's paralyzed from the waist down.
Yep.
And just hear her, stories all the time. She has what she calls her teachable moments, right? And she'll do this little video talking about, here's something that you don't do to people in a wheelchair, and this is some of the problems we face, and some of her battles to get services in different parts of the community around Denver and things like that. So I only bring that up from the standpoint of saying this is something that does need awareness.
Yeah.
There really is a lack of understanding of how, as a better community, we can interact with and help those that have disabilities of some kind or differently abled, so that they have challenges doing some of the things that some of us just take for granted. And being able to understand those things, we might be able to better understand how we can provide assistance and help too. So I'm really in support of that.
Okay, I'll talk to her and we'll come back with something else.
Thanks.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion to adjourn the temporary adjourn this to go into the regular session.
Motion by Sherry, second by Jared, all in favor?
Sorry, I got that.
Yeah, up there, I know Bev was like, did you get your certificate?
Claude-
I'm like, sorry, they probably had.
Claude Wells had them from Riverton Supervisor down, yeah.
I got them.